What's up, everybody? Back with me, Hafiz. I'm an English tutor from HZad Education, and today I'm going to continue talking about CELPIP speaking and actually give you guys a demonstration of the task. So, the first one that we're going to focus on just for this session is giving advice, which is task one. So, you already see on my screen what was also noted in the previous video that when it comes to the preparation, you have 30 seconds to prepare and then you have 90 seconds to speak. This is purely for task one. In terms of the grading, it's generally the same. These four are the ones that you need to be very mindful about, and they must basically encompass your answer every time because that's the only way you're gonna achieve a 10 on CELPIP, right? Now let's take a look at a sample question and then immediately dissect it and see what a really good sample answer looks like. All right, so here we have a sample question. So I'm just going to move that. Your friend John wants to improve his English speaking skills, but is struggling to find the time to practice. Give him some advice on how he can fit language learning into his busy schedule. So task one will give you a setting where someone needs help, usually your friend, of course, and you need to give advice. Now, there are a couple of things that you have to note before you actually start practicing. And number one is that you have to really speak as a friend, or just in case, as the character that you are being asked about. Okay, so you have to put yourself in that position. Why is that? Because that will lead to basically how you should sound when you're speaking. So if you are being positioned as a friend, you should sound like a friend. You should not sound like your boss, that person's boss. Should not sound like that person's parent, girlfriend, etc. You need to sound like a friend. Just to clarify the points that I just talked about. So there's going to be intonation, right? Substance as well, and basically delivery, right? More towards structure. So those three things are going to be heavily influenced by the person that you have to imagine yourself as. Okay, keep that in mind. And the second thing is that you need at least 2 points. Now, sometimes you might need three, so I'm gonna put that in, right? So three is usually the more or less appropriate number in terms of points because you have 90 seconds. That's quite a good time. That's quite a good time. If you want to come up with just 2 points, that's fine. But the biggest challenge will be in how you elaborate that point, how you explain it, right? And how you express it, deliver it, and so on. So the structure for the points that you need to deliver is usually always 1 point plus for each point, by the way, one explanation or exam. That's the least. Can you add 2 or 3 examples? Absolutely, right? Again, it depends on your time management and the substance or the point that you need to elaborate. Sometimes one explanation is enough. Other times, making it into 2 explanation makes it a lot stronger. That also can work. Okay. Number three, try to finish before the time is up. And a constant reminder that I'm going to make is that CELPIP is fully online. So there is no reset button, there's no pause, there's no clarification moment. So you need to finish before the time is up. Once this timer starts, there's no going back. And you have to leave yourself time to finish at the end because one of the finishing sentence that you need to make for this task is a final greeting. One of the things that you should avoid doing is actually not finishing your answer or getting cut off. That you didn't even finish explaining your last point. Please avoid that because that will lead to a huge decline in your score. So avoid that at all costs. Try to finish before the time is up. And three, follow the template. Now I know This is something that you might be a little bit surprised with, especially if you're new, right? But believe me, when it comes to speaking, it's better to stick to a template that you can practice over and over again. And then after that, you can practice or focus on your creativity, on how you come up with your ideas. All right, now what is the goal of the task? Of course, that is to give advice. Now, if you recall the rubrics, one of the category is task fulfillment. So you have to answer, right? So make sure this is the last point that I'm going to make here. You answer question. This is going to be a recurring theme, by the way, because answering the question is usually underestimated, right? So please make sure that when you do answer task one, you are giving it in the form of an advice, not a criticism, not some sort of lecture, not some sort of instructions in a way that sounds almost like demanding, etc. You are purely giving advice. So those 5 points you do need to be very wary of in the very beginning. Then after that, you can start practicing with the questions. So now here, let's repeat just one more time. So this is about your friend John that needs advice on how to improve his English speaking skill. He can't do that because he's struggling to find the time to practice. Now, do note it doesn't detail, right? Like usually the prompt are brief. They're not going to be like 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs long, or an entire essay long to basically explain why this person is struggling in great details, etc. So a lot of the times you can safely assume, right? This person is probably busy with his work or with his college, right? Or with whatever you feel most comfortable in saying. Okay, so as long as it makes sense. There's cohesiveness, there's logic in your answer. Don't worry about lying. It's okay to lie, right? Because actually, it's a lot worse when you force yourself to tell the truth. Because one of the points that I described in my previous video, it was that when you tell the truth, sometimes the answer is not actually what you expected because you've never explained it that way before, or you've never explained it in English before. So it's much better or safer to lie and just talk about something that you really feel comfortable speaking about, even though you have never experienced it before, or you've actually never done what you said. It's fine. Okay. All right, so now let's take a look at the sample answer. First things first, of course, at the start, you do need some greeting. Okay, so this is a speaking, you're pretending that you're speaking in front of the person. So you have to have some greeting. It's a simple like, hey, hope you're doing okay. Hey, haven't heard from you in a while, etc. There should be some sort of greeting in the beginning. And then after that, the second part should paraphrase the prompt. So the prompt that you just saw, like about John struggling, that's basically you letting John know, oh, I've heard of this, right? And then you paraphrase what this is, that situation. So here is a sample that I've written. I heard that you are planning to learn English, but you're pretty occupied with your schedule and find it difficult to find the time to learn. I might be able to provide some advice. So, just so you know, this is a sample. There are always a variety of ways that you can paraphrase the prompts for task one. So for example, right, I can simply change this to, hey, I heard that you are planning to learn English, but your schedule is pretty tight and you're struggling to find time or to find the schedule to learn. The important thing here is not to use the same exact sentence in any way, shape, or form of the original prompt. Right? That's a big taboo, red flag. Don't do that. Now, moving on to the body paragraph, right? As I mentioned, it's like 2 to 3 advice plus explanation examples for each. I personally go for a 3 because again, you have 90 seconds. That's usually more than enough to get 3 points across. Now, you do have to be careful in your elaboration. You don't need to be too elaborative, right? There's also moments where it's better for you to be more expressive than elaborative. So what does that mean? You add in more expression, you add in more emphasis, right? Rather than more detailed explanation. Because remember, this is your friend asking for help. You have to have some sort of expression like, oh, if you do this, this is actually really good, right? It might surprise you. This is actually quite beneficial. I've tried it before. Something like that, right? It's much better to have those expressions to fill in the time rather than adding additional details or added explanation. Why is that? It's mainly because of the task fulfillment category and also has to do with the cohesion. Because if you force yourself to continue adding more explanation, more detailed points, you can end up literally skewering off the track. So please keep that in mind. So let's take a look at the sample here. Right? First advice, you can this is the simplest template that you can get. My first advice, second, third. That's the simplest template that you can get. There's other ways as well, but this is the simplest. My first advice is to practice by listening to English learning podcasts or radio while you're on your way to work or when you're doing your chores. This will allow you to study English without having to sacrifice your other task. So again, in the beginning, I mentioned, please assume the situation in which you're basically just um, kind of pretending that you already know why that person is busy. That's completely fine, right? So as long as the theme is consistent, right? You're not changing the story, right? In one answer, you talk about tasks, you talk about jobs, but then in the next answer, you talk about sports, like sports or the dates with girlfriend or wife, right? Try to be just consistent. If the reason for being occupied is too many tasks, too many jobs, then focus on that throughout, right? So let's continue. Second, you can also set aside a specific time each day, even for just 15 minutes, to practice with a partner or a tutor. This should help you make the learning into habit without putting too much time in it. Okay. Third, you can try incorporating English into your hobbies or leisure activities such as reading English books or watching English movies with subtitles. Doing this can improve your English language skills while enjoying your free time. All right. Now, again, because this is a basic sample answer, right? There are a lot of improvements that you can make to this, mainly to do with the vocabulary and the structure. For example, it's the most visible one is in the third paragraph, right? Because look at how often the word English is was repeated. Now, this is something that you can definitely avoid by simply changing it into a pronoun, right? Or referring it to it in another way, or even making the sentence more efficient. Just making sure that you don't make any grammar mistake and still showcase a wide variety of vocabulary in other areas that will still allow you to score a 10 on CELPIP. Okay. Now, that's this. This is basically the overall structure. If you take a closer look, you do get that template here, right? First, you talk about the point while you're on work or when you're doing chores. That's the point, and then the second sentence add an extra layer to why you believe that point should work for that person. Right? You can add more than one explanation or add another example. That's completely fine, right? Because again, you have 90 seconds. That's a good amount of time, right? So one thing that I will demonstrate right now is ways that you should not speak and ways that you should speak, as in the way that you answer the question. Don't do it like this. So here's an example. Um, My first advice is to practice listening to English learning podcasts or radio while you're on your way to work or when you're doing your chores. This will allow you to study English without having to sacrifice your other tasks. Do not speak like that. Do not speak very monotonously. Don't speak like a robot. And worse, even worse, don't speak with a small voice. You have to sound confident, right? Not over the top confidence and shouting all the time, but confident enough. A perfect balance is literally just you pretending speaking to a friend. Oh, my first advice is to practice by listening to English learning podcasts or radio while you're on your way to work or when you're doing chores. This should allow you to study English without having to sacrifice your other tasks. So you have that fluctuative tone. You're basically trying to be excited in the parts where it's kind of exciting, like, oh, you you, you should. This will allow you to study English without having to sacrifice your other tasks. That part is exciting. I mean, that John can learn without sacrificing his other task. right? And then there are pauses. There are also basically flows that doesn't feel forced, nor does it feel off pace, right? So that's something that you do have to practice quite consistently, and it will take time, right? But if you do want to get a CELPIP 10 on your on the speaking task one, you have to be able to do that, right? It's not negotiable. One more example of what you should not do. Here it is. My first advice is to practice by listening to English learning podcasts or radio while you're on your way to work or when you're doing your chores. This will allow you to study English without having to sacrifice your other tasks. Speak very quickly at a pace that even normal human beings can't follow. So try not to do that. Well, actually, don't do that at all. Okay. So that is basically how your answer should sound like and look like. And then if you go to the bottom here, there is a final greeting, and this is something that you do have to fit in because a final greeting will indicate that you have completed your answer, thus completing the task fulfillment. If there is no final greeting, then the task fulfillment will be reduced, right? So the final greeting can be as simple as good luck, right? Hope that helps. But you can make it as proper as possible if you have the time. Remember, consistency is key. So do your best to practice every day. Good luck, like that. Okay. So that's basically the overall concept of self speaking task one giving advice, right? So follow the template, right? Practice the areas that I've covered, and hopefully that will help you get on your way, start on your way to reach the 10. All right, hopefully that helps. That's it for this session. I'll see you in the next video where we talk more about the specific tasks in self-help speaking. Take care, guys.